Today is one of those days where I feel like the country, especially in the political world, is just becoming unhinged. Am I the only one who feels that way today? That we as a country, when I see the reaction to things today, we're in trouble. We're going crazy, going nutso over stuff. Because that's how I feel today. Because the reaction, especially to the firing of James Comey. Yes, of course we're going to talk about that. Of course we're going to talk about Trump firing the FBI director, James Comey. It's everywhere. We have to talk about it because everyone's talking about it. But the reaction to all of this is just, well, beyond reason, of course. I could not have come up with a more perfect name for this show, especially when Trump is president of the United States. Not only that, but is it starting to, the unhingedness, the craziness, is it starting to, filter out into other parts of our society? Has anyone else seen what's happening at airports? It sounds like a start of a joke, like a stand-up routine. Have you seen what happens at airport? But seriously, it's not a joke. It's actually happening. This week alone, you had some flights canceled on a Spirit Airlines in a Florida airport in Fort Lauderdale, and people go crazy. What? Why? What do you expect to accomplish by starting a riot because your flight got canceled? It's called life. Get over it. Yes, it sucks. Yes, it's inconvenient, but it happens. Why are we going crazy? And then there was a Southwest flight this week as well, where on the plane there was a huge brawl. Why? What is happening? Everybody is going insane. Yes, Tom Benson, you're laughing because it's true. You see what's going on in the political world, especially.
Everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame, and they don't care how they get it.
Well, that, and it's just everyone wants, I don't know, everyone's selfish. Everyone only cares about themselves.
Yeah, sure.
And what's good for them, and that's it. I mean, the way people are reacting to this Comey thing, I have to be a voice of reason through this. By the way, this is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason, in a world, especially today, that is beyond reason. Because we all know the breaking news. President Trump yesterday fired James Comey. And of course, President Trump, because he's Donald Trump. That's why he did it this way. Because he's Donald Trump, writes a letter, has his bodyguard deliver it to Comey in L.A., but it's all over the news before Comey even sees it. And it just says you're hereby terminated. Then he had to add something in there about it. Even though you exonerated me from the Russia thing, of course, Trump had to add that in there. Yeah. And everyone's like, why did Trump do it this way? Why now? And my initial reaction is because he's Donald Trump. Did we forget who we elected president of the United States? We elected Donald Trump, a guy who made a lot of money and became even more famous doing a reality TV show where his signature line was, "You're fired." Does anyone else have a take on this? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We are on the air tonight on News Radio 102.5 WFLA till 10 p.m., a 2-hour show. If you're listening to the live show, if not, you can catch the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. And joining me in the control room tonight is the one and only Tom Benson. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing fine. We just need some excitement. Nothing ever happens.
Yeah, I know. We
got nothing to talk about.
Yep. No, not in the political world. No, nothing to talk about. So I know. It's just the thing that really did it for me yesterday, and I talked about this during the show because this was all happening during my show last night, is I'm watching the TV news in the background, and they have a helicopter following Comey's motorcade. And I'm thinking, are we just all paparazzi now?
Yeah.
Is the mainstream political news, mainstream news now just paparazzi where we're following? Why? Why are we doing this?
Because we can, we do.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, where's Comey going to go next? Well, he's going to go on a plane and go to home. Why are we doing this? This is so crazy to me. Does no one else think this is nuts? And then I'm watching the news this morning, and they have cameras on Attorney General Jeff Sessions leaving his house and getting into his car to go to work. And we have cameras waiting and following him. And I'm thinking, am I watching Fox News or am I watching Entertainment Tonight? Or am I watching TMZ? This is psycho. And the reaction to this, and I talked about it last night on my show, all we do now is have knee-jerk reactions to everything. Something happens, and the things that people were coming up with within an hour of it happening were just all over the place. And the Democrats now are saying he's going to be impeached because this is the next Watergate. This is like the Saturday Night Massacre. Really? The Saturday Night Massacre happened like a year after Watergate started, and there was no talk of that special prosecutor, being fired until that point. There's been talk for months now of James Comey being fired. But of course, the way Trump handled this, because, like I said, he's Donald Trump. Yeah. That's why. Just made everything even worse. And then Trump and the administration are shocked by the blowback. They thought everyone would love him for doing this. And part of me doesn't blame him because they all hate Comey. Well, they did yesterday. But now they hate Trump for firing, and they're saying this is a constitutional crisis? Everybody, get a grip. Get a grip on what's going on in the world. So I'm a voice of reason, but I actually wanted to play another voice of reason I heard at just a little over an hour ago. It was on Fox News Special Report. I just happened to be watching it in the background. And a guy by the name of Steve Hilden, who was a former advisor to former British Prime Minister David Cameron. I guess he's on one of the panelists on Special Report. I don't watch Special Report every day. I just happened to see it today. And he made a comment. His comments on this, I felt like, were the best comments I had heard all day about this whole situation with the firing of James Comey. So before I get into what Trump said and Pence said and Huckabee Sanders, acting press secretary today said, and what Schumer said and what everyone else is saying, I wanted to get this guy's cut in because I think this guy is on point on what exactly is going on with this whole situation. This is what he said just a little over an hour ago.
I think that what you've seen in the last 24 hours is Washington at its absolute worst. If you just look at the component parts, look at Congress, the immediate reaction is to go hyper-partisan, get maximum political advantage. You have Democrats who 5 minutes ago were running around saying that he cost Clinton the election and he should have been fired now. He's some kind of martyr to the Constitution. It's completely ridiculous. You've got the White House. Whatever you think about the substance of this decision, I happen to think on the substance they're right. The handling is a disaster. Because what it will mean is it just sets back the achievement of what really matters, which is action to get the economy moving, jobs and incomes, all the things you talked about in your interview with Paul Ryan. He's very confident about this not affecting that. I wish I could be so confident. And then finally, the media, as you showed in that fantastic compilation, Howie Kurtz's compilation, they have gone insane over this. And that does no credit to our political conversation, the culture of this country. No one can trust anything that anyone says anymore. Nothing's going to get done. If you're just watching all this from the outside, you have every reason to have a sense of kind of revolutionary rage at these useless leaders in Washington.
Steve, thank you. Thank you. So I'm not a follower of this guy. It's the first time I've really ever seen him speak. I just happened to see. But I watched that and I said, thank you. You are exactly right. A voice of reason in all this. Basically, what he is saying is everyone is incompetent, which it seems like that's the case, and everyone is a hypocrite, which seems like that's the case. That includes the Trump administration, that includes the Democrats, and that includes a lot of the media. And I think he's exactly right. And what is so frustrating about all of this to me is this is a giant distraction on what we really should be talking about. And that's Steve Hilden actually made that point, and I agree with him. Before I did the show yesterday, I ended up talking about a lot of it because it needs to be talked about too. But I had a whole bunch of stuff on healthcare because healthcare and the bill right now got passed in the House, the ACHA. It's going to the Senate. They don't know what the Senate's going to do. This affects 1/6 of the economy. It could affect our future. It could affect job growth in the future, the economic growth in the future, healthcare. What happens? Are we headed towards single payer? That's an issue we should be talking about. But now nobody's talking about it today. Not only that, but tax reform. And I have a great piece on that I'm going to get to later in the show. Tax reform. Trump put out his tax plan that could really boost the economy. That needs to be talked about. That needs to be addressed. That needs to be put through Congress. That is a big issue. And yet that's not being talked about either. We still have the problems with North Korea. We still have the problems with Syria. We still have the problems with Russia. And all of that stuff is real issues that need to be addressed, that need to be talked about. Congress needs to get to work on that stuff, and the president needs to sign some bills. But because of all this madness and conspiracy theory, and that's what it's getting to at this point, we're not talking about it. We're talking about Trump firing Comey. All right, so here's my take then. I mean, there's a million takes. You can literally look at any website, and there's a different take on why Trump did this. I'll tell you why I think Trump did it. Trump has been wanting to get rid of Comey for a while. Trump is very upset. Politico had reported this today, and I believe it. Trump is just infuriated that the fact is that the media, especially like CNN, they're just obsessed with it. Every time I turn on CNN, they're obsessed with their Trump-Russia connection. I mean, Sally Yates, the former acting attorney general, that talks to Congress, doesn't really say anything new. Yet CNN, every time I turn it on, they were obsessed with it for 2 days. And I'm thinking, why? Well, because they want to create some controversy with the Trump-Russia thing. Trump is obviously upset, and I really don't blame him, especially if it's not true. There's still no evidence of collusion. If it's not true, Trump is really upset. Comey is not helping him out, so Trump was probably really upset at Comey. And then the attorney general and the deputy attorney general come in. They give him a letter. They say, you really need to get rid of this guy. Give him legitimate reasons on why to do that. And Trump, because he's Donald Trump, says, okay, he's fired. And he just writes a letter and does it in the evening and expects there to be no blowback in anything because he's not a politician, because he's Donald Trump. So Trump wanted to fire him. They gave him a good reason to fire him. He thought it was going to be really popular, and they fired him. That's it. That's why. There is no conspiracy here. I mean, the Democrats need to make up their mind. Either Trump is totally incompetent, because they'll say in 1 second that Trump's the most incompetent president ever. He's an idiot. He's a moron. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then in the next sentence, they'll talk about how there's a massive conspiracy of collusion between Trump, his campaign, and Russia. And he's in bed with the Russians, and he's like a Russian agent or something. So which one is it? I think, frankly, he's incompetent because he's never had to do this before. In business, he could get away with just how we fired him. He could totally get away with that in his business if he wanted to. But that doesn't work in politics. So what he should have done is had an official press conference announced where the media was there, had everything ready, made sure Comey found out beforehand, and then did a formal announcement and talked about why, had the attorney general and the deputy attorney general talk about why, and do it in an official way that makes sense. But, like I said, he's Donald Trump. And the media and Democrats, get a grip. You have to understand. How do you not understand that this is who Donald Trump is? This is one of the reasons he was elected, is because he's different. And if you want there to be some kind of connection between Trump and Russia, show me the evidence. Let's get on with the evidence already. And if Trump did this to cover up something, that would have been the stupidest move ever, because it doesn't stop anything. Congress is still going to do the investigation. Looks like the FBI is still going to do an investigation. And yet that's not good enough. The Democrats immediately pounced on this. They're calling for a special prosecutor. They didn't want a special prosecutor when Obama was running guns to Mexico. They didn't want a special prosecutor that had anything to do with Benghazi. They didn't care about it then. But they want a special prosecutor now, even though the director of national intelligence said there's no evidence of collusion. And others are saying there's no evidence of collusion. So this is just politics today, I guess. And what we do is we have knee-jerk reactions immediately when stuff like this happens. We get in our camps. We get on our sides. Oh, I'm either for Trump. Yes, Trump is 100% right. He's awesome. He's amazing. Or Trump is in bed with Russia. And this is where we are. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We have a lot more to get to. By the way, it's not the only thing I'm going to talk about. I have stuff about healthcare I want to talk about. I have stuff about taxes I want to talk about. And I'm also going to talk about things that basically you just can't make up, is what I'm going to call it. You can't make this up segment of Beyond Reason stuff. So we'll get to that. We're going to play Trump's comments, Pence's comments, and other comments. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, and we'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am back. I was back yesterday from vacation. I was gone for a couple weeks. I know you're all waiting with bated breath for me to come back. Well, I'm finally here. And of course, as soon as I get back, there's just tons of news. Just tons of news out there. You know, Donald Trump had to make sure he did it before my show yesterday. You know, this is big. This is big for Yaffee. I'm Beyond Reason. We have to get this out now. Before. Huge. So that's what happened. And then everything has just gone crazy. I got a texter that you can text to 23680, by the way. Texter commented, he said, liberals have become unhinged. We see it every day when we look at our friends' Facebook feeds to the news. And he says the liberals once demanded James Comey be fired, and now they're crying because he was. It's exactly right, because this is what happens. You know, I heard Newt Gingrich earlier on Fox and Friends this morning, and he was saying Trump could come out tomorrow and say the flag is red, white, and blue, and they would disagree with him and say, no, it's fuchsia or something. I mean, that's where we are in this. And it's just beyond reason. Now, Trump was actually asked about this today, and Trump, you have to give him credit. He's kind of like a boss in some of this stuff. So he still met with the Russians today. He met with the Russian ambassador and another Russian diplomat today in the White House, and he didn't even invite the White House press corps in to see it. He said, forget you, screw you, you're going to stay out there. So the Russian diplomats were the only ones who took the pictures. So it's the only reason we have any pictures of that, which is crazy. But he had another meeting later today where he was asked about this by one of the press people, and this was Trump's answer on why he fired Comey.
President, why did you fire Director Comey? Why did you fire Director Comey?
Because he wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job.
So there you go. Very simply, he was not doing a good job. Trump, you can just tell by his Twitter account. By the way, we're going to do a Beyond Reason Trump Twitter update later because there's so much great stuff on there today. You can just tell he is just infuriated. He is infuriated at the reaction to this. You could see it on his face. He cannot understand this. He's just not used to this, I guess. He's not used to this. Now, Mike Pence was also on Capitol Hill today, and he was asked about all of this. And Vice President Mike Pence, this is what he said.
But did the president fire Director Comey to impede the Russia investigation?
Well, as you know very clearly, as has been stated repeatedly, and the president has been told, he's not under investigation. And as former Director Clapper of the Director of National Intelligence said, there is no evidence of collusion between our campaign and any Russian officials. That's not what. But let me be clear with you. That was not what this is about. Look, that's not what this was about. The president took strong and decisive leadership here to put the safety and security of the American people first by accepting the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General to remove Director Comey as the head of the FBI.
So, and by the way, Mike Pence got a little controversy earlier because earlier when he was talking to that reporter, he said President Trump isn't being investigated. And a lot of, people were like, yes, he is. Well, actually, no. President Trump himself is not being investigated. That has been said. Now, some of his campaign was being investigated, but he's not. But everything Mike Pence said there was correct, was right. Now, this is my advice to Donald Trump. Fire all of your aides and only talk to Mike Pence. That's what I think you should do. Because if you really want someone who could really help you get through all of this, just talk to Mike Pence, because he understands how this, and he does a great job, I think. I just really like Mike Pence. So if the Democrats ever do succeed in impeaching Trump, then we just get Mike Pence. And, it's not the end of the world, I guess. But, I mean, it's just crazy. There's articles today about, impeachment is coming. It is coming for Donald Trump. For what? What are you impeaching him for? I never even hear the outline what exactly you're impeaching him for. You're going to impeach him for incompetence? I don't think that flies. Yeah, we hear vagueness of collusion, but I want specific things on how Trump colluded. What is the evidence? And this is why he should be impeached. I don't hear this stuff.
It's the old story of you say it often enough, some people will begin to believe you.
Yeah, and everywhere I've read, New York Times had something almost 2 hours after this announcement yesterday about, they're all comparing it to Watergate. Watergate. We're going to make this into the next Watergate. They're salivating, trying to make this into the next Watergate, when that wasn't even the same thing. So it's just crazy. Now, Huckabee Sanders was talking today. I guess she was in for Sean Spicer today.
Supposedly today, tomorrow, and Friday. He's off for the rest of the week.
Yeah, so she's the acting press secretary, and she was asked about all this, and this is what she had to say.
That most of the people that are declaring war today were the very ones that were begging for Director Comey to be fired. If Hillary Clinton had won the election, which thank God she didn't, but if she had, and she had been in the same position, she would have fired Comey immediately, and the very Democrats that are criticizing the president today would be dancing in the streets celebrating. So it's just I think the purest form of hypocrisy.
I think she's exactly right. And by the way, we're going to have a cut in the second hour. I'm sure a lot of you have heard it already with Stephen Colbert, and he made the announcement on his Late Show, and the reaction to that is amazing. But I mean, immediately you have the Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and other people coming out and saying this is all has to do with Russia. But weeks ago, they all hated James Comey. That's the biggest reason why Trump did this, I think. Trump actually thought, maybe it's a little naivete on his part, but he actually thought by doing this now that he would get everyone to love him. He would make a move that would get everyone to love him because everyone hates James Comey. But the Democrats, Comey has been brilliant at getting people on both sides to hate him. Love him one day, hate him the next day. So he thought, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this real quick. The Attorney General recommended it. I want him gone for a while. I'm just going to do this and everyone will love me for it. And he is infuriated today because they don't love him for it because they're going to use whatever they can to get rid of him.
Everybody is posturing for the the next election cycle.
And that's a great point, Tom Benson, you bring up, because I feel like that is everything. All everybody does is posture. All everyone does is get on their side. All everyone does is spin and get to a different angle on what is the real answer here.
What we need is a no spin zone. Oh, no, we had one of those. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's coming back. But that's what's happening. And it's so obvious. In the next segment, I'm going to play the comments from Chuck Schumer this morning, speaking to the Senate, and what he had to say about all this. And you can just see the arrogance and smugness on his face. They are salivating. They are like sharks in blood-infested water. They smell blood, and they can't wait to chomp down them and a lot of people in the media. And it's just, it's like a sideshow. It's like a circus trying to watch this stuff. Shark Week, I guess, is what it's like. It's insane. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. I think the best answer to all of this is just everyone there is incompetent. Everyone in Washington is just dumb. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Yes, welcome back to Orlando's Smart Talk Radio, where I'm your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, joined by Tom Benson producing. If you're listening to the live show and you want to call, you can at 407-916-5400. You can also text to 23680. We are on Facebook Live as well. You can send me a friend request on Facebook, and I will accept it, or you can just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. If you miss any of the show, check out the podcast. Just go to beyondreasonradio.com, and all the different ways to catch the podcast are on there. We're available anywhere podcasts are available, or you can just download the Beyond Reason Radio app. So I haven't seen any following of James Comey's car today, so that's good. I haven't seen the paparazzi after him wanting to ask questions. I mean, that was just so bizarre to me yesterday, watching them follow his motor. I don't really know what they were trying to accomplish.
Echoes of following OJ.
Yeah, that's what everybody was saying.
LA Expressway, yeah.
I mean, that's what everyone was saying, but that was totally different. They were trying to catch him for a crime. This was just him going home.
Yeah.
And it was just incredibly bizarre. That was the thing that really did it for me yesterday, where I was like, we are just living in bizarro world with all of this stuff. It's just, I guess it's the entertainment media complex, or the entertainment news complex, where we have to do all this stuff. Social media makes us all have knee-jerk reactions instead of actually thinking through before we comment on things. We just want stuff out immediately. And so what we do is we just pick a side, and we just do what our side says, and then that's what it is. So Chuck Schumer this morning, he had to make sure he spoke to the Senate. This is the minority leader. And, of course, he was going to talk about how this is another example of Trump's connection to the Russians. And, we're going to go through this here, and this is what he said this morning.
The dismissal of Director Comey establishes a very troubling pattern. This administration has now removed several law enforcement officials in a position to conduct independent investigations of the president and his administration, from Acting Attorney General Sally Yates to Preet Bharara, and now Jim Comey.
Okay, stop right there if you can. Can you pause that for me? This was something I saw all over the place yesterday. Exactly what he said. It's stupid. Sally Yates was obviously removed because she wasn't with the Trump administration on the travel ban.
She wasn't following her constitutional oath.
She was not following, you're right, she wasn't following her directives to support the travel ban. It was well known, well documented, and well said at the time that is why Sally Yates was removed. It had nothing to do with the investigation with Russia. Nobody at the time even believed it had anything to do with Russia. So to just drag her into this, it's just they are so desperate for this narrative. But it had nothing to do with it. So that was my first thought on that. But you can just tell Chuck Schumer is giddy about getting this out there. And, he continues on here.
What should happen now, what must happen now, is that Mr. Rosenstein appoints a special prosecutor to oversee this investigation. Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein sat in the Judiciary Committee and promised to appoint a special prosecutor at the appropriate time. He said, quote, "I'm willing to appoint a special counsel whenever I determine that it's appropriate." So my colleague, Senator Coons, asked him, would you agree that it's vital to the assurance of confidence in our democracy and law enforcement system that any investigation into these matters be fair, free, thoroughly, and politically independent? Mr. Rosenstein answered, yes, I do. If there was ever a time when circumstances warranted a special prosecutor, it is right now.
Why?
Mr. Rosenstein already expressed concern that Director Comey damaged the integrity of the FBI. The Attorney General has already had to recuse himself from the investigation for being too close to the President. If Mr. Rosenstein is true to his word, that he believes this investigation must be, quote, fair, free, thorough, and politically independent, if he believes, as I do, that the American people must be able to have faith in the impartiality of this investigation, he must appoint a special prosecutor and get his investigation out of the hands of the FBI and far away from the heavy hand of this administration.
So, of course, he was going to come out and say they need to appoint a special prosecutor. Do people realize that there's not even a criminal investigation into the whole Trump-Russia thing? It's not a criminal investigation. It's an intelligence investigation, but it's not a criminal investigation. So why would you hire a special prosecutor for something that's not even a criminal investigation?
And Watergate was a criminal investigation.
Yeah, Watergate was a criminal investigation. So, but he's going to come out and say there is not a more appropriate time to put in place a special prosecutor. Actually, there were like 5 more appropriate times during the Obama administration, which you said nothing. It's hard to make this point that we need a special prosecutor when Congress is already investigating. Trump can't do anything about that. The FBI isn't going to stop investigating, can't do anything about that. And every time we get people on the record about this, they say there's no evidence. So what's the deal?
So let's just assume a special prosecutor gets appointed.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness, he's a Republican.
Yeah, they won't be happy with that either.
No, and if he's a Democrat, where's the impartiality there?
Yeah, they're not going to be happy until Trump's impeached, I guess, or until they win election in 2020. I mean, that's kind of where we are, but it's just politics. This is what's going to happen. No matter what Trump does, this is what they're going to do. They're going to say it has something to do with Russia. So I want to move on here, and I want to talk about something that's really more important than all of this, something that we really should get to on this, and that is tax reform. Because the Trump administration, I believe it was last week, couple weeks ago, put out their plan for tax reform, which we really need, especially with the economy and the way it's changing. The tax code needs to be simplified. And one of the main things that he did is he wants to lower the corporate income tax rate. So businesses are more encouraged to stay here, to create jobs here, to invest in their business rather than giving it to the federal government. This is something a lot of economists agree with. And of course, the Democrats are coming out and saying, well, he just wants to give more to the wealthy. This is what we always hear. Even though it's a tax cut across the board, even though a tax cut for businesses includes small businesses, it's always the same thing. Well, he just wants to help the rich, and the poor suffer because the poor need to get money from the rich through the federal government, through redistribution. That's the only way the poor can succeed, is if the government takes from the rich and gives to them through some giant bureaucracy government program.
Thank you, Robin Hood.
Yeah. Well, it's not even Robin Hood, as people have pointed out. Robin Hood took from the government and gave back to the people. But that's what happens. And why we think the government and these giant government programs is really what's best for our economy and what's best for the poor. I don't know. We could go over that all the time. But I found a piece here from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and it's by Ira Stoll, and makes some great points here on how the Reagan tax cuts worked, because the Democrats are trying to revise history on that to bash Trump and his tax cut plan. And this is how Ira started the piece. It says Trump's, he was quoting another piece here, Trump's tax cuts may be more damaging than Reagan's. That was the headline of the New York Times, put over on an article by Stephen Ratner, a money manager who served in the Obama administration. Ira continues on here. The headline made me chuckle because more damaging than Reagan's seems like a pretty low bar. The Reagan tax cuts, after all, like JFK's, weren't damaging at all. Instead, they spurred economic growth and job creation, powering Reagan to a landslide re-election and sealing his status as one of our most popular presidents. It says, here is how the Ratner article in the Times described the damage. The Reagan tax cuts increased the budget deficit, helping elevate interest rates over 20%, which in turn contributed to the double-dip recession that ensued. The stock market fell by more than 20%. Fiscally, the revenue loss totaled 2.9% of the average gross domestic product between 1981 and 1985. But Ira debunks this person and does it very well, and I really liked it. Ira continues, says, let's take these accusations one at a time. It is true that the federal budget deficit modestly increased during the Reagan years, from 2.6% of GDP in 1980 to 2.7% in 1989. I know that is very modest. The year he left office, according to the White House, that was the year he left office, 1989. But the rise in the deficit, and this is something I point out to a lot of people that don't realize this, but Ira points it out, and Ira's right, but the rise in the deficit was not because the federal government took in less money. In fact, even with the lower Reagan income tax rates, tax revenues soared. Federal receipts were $991 billion in 1989, up from $517 billion in 1980. That's quite an increase in just 9 years. During the same period, the top individual income tax rate decreased to 28% in 1989 from 70% in 1980. That should debunk the whole thing that we need to tax the rich more, and that's how the government will get more money. It's called the Laffer curve. It doesn't always work. It says the main driver of the increased deficit was defense spending, which rose to $304 billion in 1989 from $135 billion in 1980. The increase in defense spending is what increased the budget deficit. It had nothing to do with the lower tax rates. The increase in defense spending did not go along with spending cuts in other areas, mostly because he had a Democrat Congress who were not willing to do it. Reagan, by the way, I've read his autobiography, actually listened to the audiobook. He said one of the biggest regrets, one thing he really thinks that the country needed, even after his presidency, is a balanced budget amendment. He thinks the country needs a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution. So he pointed out that spending is a problem. But he said, given that Reagan's military buildup helped defeat the Soviet Union, liberating hundreds of millions of people from communist oppression, an increase in the federal budget deficit of 0.1 percentage points of GDP seems an acceptable price. He said the ideas that Reagan tax cuts were to blame for high interest rates is just flaky. In January 1981, when Reagan was inaugurated, the effective federal funds rate was 19.08%. In January 1989, when he left office, it was 9.12%. The interest rates were controlled not by President Reagan, but by President Carter's appointee as chairman of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker. But even despite that, interest rates went down because after Reagan. So, and he says recession, it's true that GDP growth under Reagan didn't really kick in powerfully until the first quarter of 1983. But once it did, it wasn't a recession, but a boom. A 4.6% annual real growth rate in 1983, 7.3% in 1984, which we have not seen in a long time since then. 4.2% in 1985, and so on for 7 fat years. That one of the intellectual engines of Reaganism labeled the period, that's what was labeled the period by a noted author at the time, the 7 fat years. So he makes the point here, and he makes a lot of points. One, it was not the tax cuts that caused the increase in the deficit. The tax cuts did not cause a recession. It actually caused an economic boom. And the tax cuts did not cause high interest rates. In fact, interest rates went down. So what does that mean? It means we need to cut the corporate tax income. We need to cut taxes. We need to simplify the tax code. And Trump's plan is at least a step in the right direction. A little history for you, a little facts for you that I thought I would throw out there in a very important topic. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. It's been a quick hour so far. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight if you're listening to the live show. If not, make sure, if you miss any of the show, actually make sure to check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Best way to do that, actually just download the Beyond Reason Radio app at the Google Play or the Apple App Store. So we haven't done this in a while, but I think because Trump has definitely been very active on it today, I think it's time for the Beyond Reason Trump Twitter update.
I'm a tweet with no good in a deal. Confidence in Comey a long time ago. In fact, I never even voted for his confirmation because I doubted his ability to run the FBI. But I would say is that I'm safe if I'm that old putty cat.
All right, we had a little double audio there, but that's okay. You get the message. So it's time for the Beyond Reason Trump Twitter update. And by the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. That is Beyond Reason, the letter R. And Trump is obviously pretty upset today. And I try to put myself, I can't really do this too much, but I'm trying to put myself in Trump's shoes. Wouldn't be too bad, and billionaire. I don't mind these shoes too much. But I can imagine, because everyone knows Trump is a big watcher of cable news. And he doesn't just watch Fox, he watches them all. He watches Fox the most, obviously, but he watches them all. And if he's constantly seeing this stuff about Russia, especially on CNN, and he had no connection with Russia, I would be pretty pissed too. I'd be pretty upset too. I'd be angry too. If they were just continuing this narrative and you're like, what the heck? I want to try to move on from this and get stuff done. And they just keep going on this. The part of me doesn't blame him for being upset. And apparently he has been really upset about that. So Trump fires Director Comey and has been tweeting about it nonstop for the whole day, I think. And his first tweet on this was, directed at Chuck Schumer. Of course, he's bringing back the titles for people, the adjectives. He says, "Crying Chuck Schumer." There we go, bringing back the nicknames for people. Crying Chuck Schumer stated recently, "I do not have confidence in him, James Comey, any longer. Then acts so indignant." Then Trump, because he knows Twitter, put hashtag drain the swamp. So there you go. Then Trump says this: "The Democrats have said some of the worst things about James Comey, including the fact that he should be fired, but now they play so sad." And he's exactly right. And then right after that, he said James Comey will be replaced by someone who will do a far better job bringing back the spirit and prestige of the FBI. And then Donald Trump retweeted a Drudge Report tweet that said Mexico's second deadliest country tops Afghanistan, Iraq. That kind of came out of nowhere. Then Trump tweeted, this is all within an hour, a couple hours of each other. He said, Trump tweeted, "Comey lost the confidence of almost everyone in Washington, Republican and Democrat alike. When things calm down, they will be thanking me." You can just tell he was watching cable news while he was tweeting all this and just reacting. Then he retweeted Drudge Report's 10 scandals on director's watch. Then he tweeted, "Watching Senator Richard Blumenthal speak of Comey is a joke." And then he goes on to tweet some reports. He retweeted, I guess that's like an ad that says, "The Democrats should be ashamed. This is a disgrace. Drain the swamp." He had a bunch of other tweets as well. Like this one, Dems have been complaining for months and months about Director Comey. Now that he's been fired, they pretend to be aggrieved. Phony hypocrites is what Trump said. Oh, man, Trump's not happy today. Oh, this stuff is just so crazy. All right, this has been 1 hour Beyond Reason Radio. We have one more hour to go. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this whole Comey firing thing and the backlash, and we'll be right back. This is Beyond Reason Radio. So during the break, I heard a comment from Greg Gutfeld from Fox, and he said this is making the Democrats look, really two-faced, which would require a lot more Botox. It's just, I was like, I mean, he's right, I guess. I have a great piece by him, by the way, that I might get to later. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. If you missed any of the first hour, I kind of went on a really big rant against this whole Comey reaction, the Comey firing reaction. So what I want you to do is after the show, check out the podcast of the show, and you have to listen to it. And we're going to get into it more here, but I just made the point that everyone has just become unhinged in this country over everything, especially when it has to do with Donald Trump. For some reason, people say it's Trump derangement syndrome or whatever. For some reason, it seems like that no matter what this guy does, the country just can't handle itself with this thing. And it's just, all he did was fire the FBI director, which he has every right to do. And of course, the way he handled it was pretty incompetent. But he's Donald Trump. That's how Donald Trump is.
But where's his chief of staff? Where's his advisors saying, okay, we can do this, Mr. President, but here's how to do it?
I guess they're just a bunch of yes men.
Oh, okay.
They're just a bunch of yes men. Trump wants to do it. He does it. He does it immediately. And they're like, yes, sir, Trump. Yes, we don't want you yelling at us. Like I've been saying, forget his advisors. Donald Trump, if you want someone to listen to, make Mike Pence your official advisor. Listen to him, okay? He's the only one that really seems to make any sense in your administration. Because obviously the way this was handled, I mean, you don't send out a letter to the media before the person who's being fired reads it. And you don't do it at 6 o'clock in the afternoon without any kind of official announcement or press conference. You just kind of throw it out there and then expect everyone to just love you for it. And by the way, what's even more beyond reason is Donald Trump today. First, he meets with the Russians. So meeting with the Russians the day after this takes some balls.
Oh, yeah. How ironic, huh?
And he doesn't invite the White House press corps in. And then he meets with Henry Kissinger. Who is Kissinger known for working with?
I am not a crook.
Exactly right. With Nixon. On the same day, everyone's comparing you to Nixon and Watergate. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. But what's so infuriating to me, and I talked about this the first hour, is the reaction to this. And, Greg Gutfeld's right. The Democrats are completely two-faced on this. And of course they're going to be two-faced on this because they hate Donald Trump and it's just politics. And everyone in politics is a hypocrite today. Everyone's a hypocrite today, it seems like. And this is just another example. But the best example of this today, it happened yesterday, shortly after the announcement, was Stephen Colbert on his late night show, which, by the way, I talked about this yesterday. You weren't here, Tom Benson. Have late night shows always been this political? Is this kind of new? I mean, all the late night shows are really bashing Trump and really into politics, it seems like.
Well, that's because Colbert has had rating success doing it. And he's been doing it since the inauguration day.
Yeah.
So they're following the leader. They figure they got to go after the
Seth Meyers is doing it now. Jimmy Kimmel is getting political now. Jimmy Fallon's not quite as much, but he's there. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
Back in the day, Johnny Carson and Jay Leno would make fun of the president, but they made fun of everybody, and it was in jest. And these guys are vicious.
Well, not only that, but they're actually making fun and commentary on policy. Where, you used to make fun of the president, but it was kind of his personality or kind of in jest, like you said. No, now they're just straight up going after his policy decisions and bashing them. What they've said about health care. It's like, really? You're a late night show. I don't want political commentary from you. But I guess they don't know their role. But Stephen Colbert, he makes this announcement on the show. I'm sure a lot of you already heard this, but we'll play it here again. And he tells the audience that Trump fires Comey, and the reaction is just priceless. Here it is.
Huge story that broke just minutes ago, like less than 10 minutes ago. FBI Director James Comey has just been fired by Donald Trump.
They're cheering.
Wow. Huge Donald Trump fans here tonight. That shows no gratitude at all. Man. I mean, did Trump forget about the Hillary emails that Comey talked about? I mean, thanks for the presidency, Jimmy. Now don't let the door hit you where the Electoral College split you. I'm sad. My heart is thumping. My pulse is racing. He fired the FBI director who has said under oath that he's investigating the Trump campaign's ties with Russia. No rationale has been given yet as to why, but it came on the recommendation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
What is happening? They're booing the Attorney General?
I might know why. I think he was fired because Comey couldn't guess the name Rumpelstiltskin.
I didn't really get that. Did you get that?
Trump sent Comey a letter in which he writes, "While I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I, and nevertheless, concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau." Does everything have to be about him? "Well, I greatly appreciate you telling me that I am an amazing lover. I am leaving you for a younger woman on the advice of the Department of Justice."
Okay, the last part was actually kind of funny, but the rest of it's amazing. So he gets up there and he makes this announcement and they all cheer. They all think it's great. And Stephen Colbert spends the next 2 minutes trying to convince the audience that it's a bad thing. And it's like, wait, I thought don't we hate Comey because he got Trump elected according to what you've said before? Shouldn't we be happy he fired Comey? But now
we hate Trump even more.
So we hate Trump, so we're not supposed to cheer, and that's right. Colbert's taken off guard and he has to convince them now. I mean, this is where we are today. We have to take orders from our leaders, I guess, or Stephen Colbert, on how we should think about things.
Our comedians, you mean?
Yeah, our comedians, I guess. Yeah, I guess he's a political leader for a lot of people now, but it's just, we can't have our own opinions. I don't know. I just thought the whole thing was, I mean, that was such a great example of where we are now. And what did he expect? You've been bashing Comey for months now. Hillary Clinton was bashing Comey a week ago. All of them were bashing Comey. And so he fires him, and everyone, the audience is thinking, oh, well, yeah, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Yeah, wait, no, we're not. But I thought, it's just that was such a great example of that. So I also found some interesting comments here. Rand Paul was on Fox and Friends this morning, and he was asked about this, and he actually made some really good comments on this. First, here's his take on. He's sort of a voice of reason on this, and this is the Voice of Reason show, so I wanted to play it. This is what he said first off about what he thought on Comey. Go ahead and play Rand Paul cut one for me.
You know, I think it couldn't happen soon enough. I had lost confidence in Comey a long time ago. In fact, I never even voted for his confirmation because I doubted his ability to run the FBI. But I would say that most of America thought that he botched the Clinton email scandal. All the Democrats thought he said too much, and all the Republicans thought he didn't do enough. So he had the confidence of almost no one. Chuck Schumer said 6 months ago that he had lost confidence in him. But I thought it was especially telling that in the letter that the Assistant Attorney General sent, he said that Eric Holder said that Comey had violated long-standing Department of Justice procedures. And I think without question that's true. And I think he politicized something by making way too many statements to the press. So I think it is time for new leadership at the FBI.
So is anything Rand Paul said there wrong? No. He's exactly right. I talked about this in the first hour. I believe the reason why Trump fired Comey, he's been furious at Comey for not backing him on the Russian thing. He hasn't liked Comey for a long time, and the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General came up with the letters saying you need to get rid of this guy, and that was a straw that broke the camel's back, and they said, okay, this is a great reason, this is a great excuse, I'm going to get rid of him. And because he's Donald Trump, and he made a lot of money off a reality show where he just fired people, And in business, he probably did stuff like this all the time. He just writes a letter and sends it out and hopes it'll all go well because he's not used to this. And yet everybody's trying to make this into some giant conspiracy about a cover-up. And it's like, what I usually tell people that are trying to do that, I say, you guys give Trump way too much credit. I mean, the Democrats in doing all this, they're really giving Trump way too much credit, I think. I don't think Trump thought it through that much. I think Trump just did it because this is what we do now. We have knee-jerk reactions, and that's how Trump is. So now Rand Paul, he was asked about the whole Russia thing. And is this about a cover-up from Russia? What are you hearing on the Hill about the investigation in Russia and dealing with all this? And what Rand Paul said to me is amazing to me. This is what he said.
Not only is there no evidence that the Trump administration or campaign was connected to Russia or committed any crime, no evidence at all of committing a crime. There's not even an accusation that I know of what crime would have potentially been committed. So all this breathless talk about people, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on. Many of these Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, said they lost confidence in Comey a long time ago. Hillary Clinton's been blaming Comey. They should be thanking President Trump for getting rid of Comey because he politicized something that may well have had something to do with Hillary Clinton's loss. So I think it's a lot of crocodile tears and a lot of people saying, they were for getting rid of Comey too, but now they're going to say it's all about this Russia investigation, which hasn't produced one iota of evidence that anybody did anything wrong or broke the law.
So Rand Paul's on the Hill, and he's asked about this. And he says not only is there no evidence of a Trump-Russia collusion, but there's no one even up here really making that accusation. Wow. That, to me, is a big deal. Then why are we still obsessed with this whole thing? Rand Paul is saying it's not true. It's not out there. They want to create this narrative that isn't there. And now they're all being hypocrites, of course. I thought that was a pretty big deal when he said that. So what do you guys think? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We have a lot more to get to. By the way, Rand Paul had some comments a couple of days ago when he was on Hannity's show. And there was some reports out there about this on how he believes that not only was Trump spied on by the Obama administration during the campaign, but that other people, including Rand Paul, were spied on during the campaign season. Other candidates for president were spied on during the campaign season. If that's true, that's a very big deal. So we'll get to that and a lot more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We've been talking about the Comey firing and everything. By the way, the Washington Post and the New York Times, they threw out another theory today. Of course, there's a bajillion theories out there that Comey asked for more resources to do the Russia investigation. He asked the acting attorney general, and then that's why they fired him. So there's that being thrown into there as well. I think you all give Trump way too much credit with all this stuff. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Todd in Orlando. Todd, what's your take on this?
Yaffee, how are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How's it going?
Hey, pretty good. Obviously, I don't know for sure what happened, but here's
that's true. No one really does except Trump.
Exactly. Here's what I think. Initially, you got Comey sitting there and with the Hillary situation, and Comey comes out and goes, okay, well, she's obviously this classified mail. She's transferred to people she shouldn't have transferred it to. And he goes, well, I'm not going to prosecute her because I don't think there's any intent
right.
on her part to commit a crime. Well, the statute doesn't require there to be any intent at all.
Correct.
I mean, so right away it's like, well, this is just partisan nonsense. The rest of us would be obviously in jail. So, but I don't think Trump cared that much. He's like, look, I want to be president. I'm not here to vengeance against the Clintons, so I don't care. But the reason why this is important is this is why. Then it comes to this Russian thing, which is just complete nonsense. Nobody's, and I think what Rand Paul was talking about is obviously the Democrats are trying to claim there was collusion, but they not have a scintilla of evidence that there's anything there. And instead of Comey just shutting that down and going, well, this is silly because there's no evidence at all about this, I think the media might be right. Maybe he asked for more money. I'm going to keep investigating this. I want some more money. And at a certain point, Trump's looking at this guy going, you don't prosecute her when she clearly committed these big-time crimes, and because the Democrats keep yapping, you keep bringing this up like it's a story and an ongoing story, and I think he got tired of it. Maybe he wanted some more money for it, and he goes, well, what am I dealing with you for? Why would I have you as the FBI so the story just lingers for years or goes on and on when there's nothing here? And if I was
there were reports that Trump has been really upset that this story keeps going on and on and on. And
if you were completely innocent, and obviously just common sense goes, there's no collusion between Donald Trump and what the collusion was that Donald Trump got the Russians to. When you think about what the Russians did, all the Russians did was hack their emails so that showed the American people the Democrats were corrupt. I mean, that's the story. The story is the Russians hacked it and showed the American people the Democrats were corrupt. I mean, the story should be the Democrats were corrupt. But in any event, I just think that Trump's getting tired of this and said, why would I want my director of FBI wasting resources trying to find something on me? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't put up with it. I'd say, okay, let's get somebody in here who can concentrate on something that can help the American people. So, I mean, that's... And
of course, and like I said before, of course it's Donald Trump, and the way he goes about this stuff is just completely unorthodox and crazy, just sending out a letter and everything.
Well, the other thing, I agree with that, but I'd say the other thing is, which is classic Donald Trump, and some of the reason why his supporters love him is he doesn't worry about this PC nonsense once again. I don't care how it looks, what the media says. They're at war against me. I don't like the job the guy's doing. Fired. See you. Okay? And then, in the politically correct world, everybody's like, oh, my gosh, how could you do that? How could you do that? It's like, I don't think he's doing a good job. See you. And so I think a lot of his supporters are like, oh, I don't think he's doing a good job either. I think this thing totally...
Well, even the Democrats didn't think he was doing a good job.
Exactly. So it's like, okay. I mean, nobody thinks he's doing a good job. So, I mean, I don't know what the big... but I understand how the game's played. You understand how the game's played.
Right.
And, so anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I love your show. Love what you do. Of course, you know that.
All right.
All right,
Todd.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, thanks, man, so much. So the only thing I have to say is when he says Donald Trump doesn't, care what the media thinks or at war with them, I think it's pretty obvious Donald Trump cares what they think because he's been tweeting out all day in response to what they think, and he's been infuriated, and he got infuriated to begin with because what the media thinks. So I got a tweet from Brandon who just hates Trump. He tweets me all the time, hates Trump. He made the point here that he goes, telling me, so you think an actual ongoing FBI investigation is bogus because Rand said so. That's not the only reason. It's because they still haven't had any evidence of collusion. But you entertain conspiracies about spying. And what he's talking about here, and I want to get to the spying thing, because there are a lot of people that actually believe this is like conspiracy stuff. Even though Edward Snowden revealed to all of us that spying is going on, monitoring is going on of metadata and other things, and Americans are being included in all of this. And even if it's done illegally, which a lot of it apparently was done illegally, my point was, should we still be doing this? Because to begin with, it was just for terrorism, right? That was the whole reason we needed all this NSA stuff, was for terrorism.
Sure.
Yet we're finding out that the congressmen and other people are being brought up in this bulk collection because they're talking with like the Russian ambassador and other stuff. What does that have to do with terrorism? So it's gone way beyond just spying for terrorism. It's gone way beyond that, where we were spying on Angela Merkel, and we had spies when we were monitoring phone calls in Europe that had nothing to do with terrorism, and it's going way beyond that. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because Rand Paul talked about this on Hannity a couple nights ago, and he actually he said he had anonymous sources telling him that they were spying on his phone calls. And he wants the information on whether this is true. So he put forth that information. And then Rand Paul talked about this on Hannity, and this is what he said.
You know, it's sort of mind-boggling. We've been hearing rumors, and anonymous sources have been telling us for a couple of months now that they believe that the Obama administration was spying on other presidential candidates other than Trump, and that it may be politically motivated. Now, I don't have the evidence. I haven't seen the evidence, but I've requested it. I've asked the White House to look into it, and I've asked both of the intelligence committees. There are about 8 members of Congress who know more about spying, and they get all of the information that most of us are not privy to. I've asked those 8 members. These are the gatekeepers. There's something called a Gates notification. If they looked at my personal information, if they listened to my phone call, they're supposed to have a Gates notification, and there's supposed to be someone who knows that this happened. I've never been notified, and so my question is, are they supposed to tell me they're spying on me, or do I have to request it? But now that we've gotten these sources, I have made formal written requests to find out if the Obama administration did indeed spy on me.
Senator, we're going from 654 to over 2,200 in a year?
It may be even worse than that. When we spy on foreigners, we gather up maybe as much as 1 million pieces of information on 1 million different Americans. Now, they've looked at 30,000. So what you're hearing about is the ones they looked at, but they have 1 million different phone calls, transactions, emails from Americans who have talked to people overseas. The danger is if they're willing to use this for political purposes, what if someone's making an international deal and buying a company and it's top secret? It would be devastating to your stock price to know you're negotiating a deal with a foreign country or with a foreign company. What if someone decides to sell that to your competitors? Well, we can't have our intelligence agencies listening to anybody willy-nilly without a warrant.
And the fact is, we knew this stuff was going on because Edward Snowden revealed it to us. I mean, it would have been seen as conspiracy theory before that, but it was revealed it was going on, and then we had this stuff going on with the unmasking and all the stuff revealed on that, and a lot of that was probably done legally because they were spying on someone else, and they catch up Americans involved in this, and that's the hardest part about all this is even if the Obama administration was doing this for political reasons, even if the intelligence community was doing this for political reasons, it's hard to prove that that's why they were doing it. And my point is, and Rand Paul's point is, that's why all of this spying to begin with can be incredibly dangerous. And if you think what Rand Paul is saying is kind of conspiracy stuff, I always go back to this cut I think it was a couple months ago, actually, with Dennis Kucinich. After Trump made that tweet that he was being spied on, Dennis Kucinich, who is a Democrat who hates Donald Trump, made a comment actually defending Trump's comments here. And that point to me, when I hear that makes me question a lot of things. This is what Kucinich said a couple months ago about all this.
There are people who are saying about President Trump's claim, it could never happen. Well, frankly, it happened to me. And I had proof because the Washington Times actually let me listen into a tape that was made of a conversation in my congressional office. It was a conversation between myself and a foreign leader. The conversation was approved and cleared by House attorneys who said, yes, you can do that. That's your constitutional right. But someone had intercepted it. And I learned about it 2 years after I left office. Members of Congress ought to be aware that my experience was that my phone wasn't safe in a congressional office. Now, if they can do that to a member of Congress, they can certainly do it to a presidential candidate, and they can do it to private citizens as well. Hello, America.
So I hear that, and I'm thinking, this is a problem. It still seems like a problem to me if we're spying on the conversations with members of Congress. Because what could the things that you could do with that, not only that, But now when they talk to foreign diplomats, aren't going to want to talk to them because they're going to be afraid that they're going to be spied on. And this is someone who hates Trump. This is someone who's a Democrat. This is someone who is not going to defend Trump for just any reason, saying, look, it happened to me, and this has been going on. And, in terms of what the NSA was doing, the bulk collection, in terms of the spying, that was something that actually got bipartisan support to rein that in. There were Democrats, Republicans, liberals, and conservatives who believed, and actually there was a lot of conservatives that thought the spying was okay, and I disagreed with them on that. But there were a lot of bipartisan support on both sides to agree that the NSA should not be involved in all of this, and that this is just too much. And what Edward Snowden said, even if that all this is not being done for nefarious purposes, the infrastructure is now in place. And all it takes is for that one bad leader to come in, or one bad leader to come into the intelligence community. And it's turnkey tyranny is what he said. It could create a problem in the future. So if you're on whatever side you're on, I think this is a legitimate concern. But maybe I'm wrong. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We have a lot more to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. If you missed any of the show, we talked a lot about the Comey firing, especially in the first hour, played a lot of different cuts and all that stuff. So if you missed any of it, check out the podcast. Anywhere podcasts are available, you can just download the Beyond Reason Radio app and check that out. You can also send me a friend request on Facebook. Just search Michael Yaffee. I will accept it. I'm on Facebook Live there as well, or you can just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page, and you can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. So it's time to get to some more important things, actually. I've talked a lot about healthcare, and so I wanted to get... I found this piece by John Stossel, who has been really good on this issue. There's actually another piece in the Washington Examiner I found on this that, if we have time, I'll get to it, but I want to get to the John Stossel thing. And by the way, I'm going to end the show today with stories that, how do I want to put it? You can't make this up, is what I'm going to say. You can't make this Beyond Reason stuff up, because there's some stuff going on out there. It's just like, you can't make this up. So we're going to get to that as well. But I found this piece from John Stossel. It was really, really interesting, talking about healthcare. I railed on healthcare in the show yesterday, how it's amazing to me how the Democrats have reacted to the passage of that bill. I mean, it's amazing to me how both sides have reacted. I mean, the Republicans basically had a party afterwards, and it's like it hasn't even passed the Senate. A little premature to have this party. It could look totally different once it's out of the Senate. But the Democrats are acting like it's the end of the world and it's going to kill babies or something, when it's not even a full repeal of Obamacare. It actually keeps a lot of Obamacare stuff in place. It doesn't go far enough, in my opinion. So the fact that it's still halfway Obamacare and the Democrats are still really upset about it, you might as well just go full free market solution then, because they're going to be upset no matter what you do. And Stossel kind of brings that up here. And he has this piece in his column. And he said, the way he starts it out is very interesting. He goes, the House repealed Obamacare. Okay, they didn't really. But they passed a bill that repeals some bad parts of it, like the individual mandate tax, medicine cabinet tax, flexible spending account tax, and health savings account withdrawal tax. Good. And I agree with them. Those things needed to be done. A lot of people say, well, that's just tax cuts for the rich. No, I have a health savings account, for instance. So it goes beyond just tax cuts for the rich there. And it takes money, back into the medical system. It's not passed on to the consumers. He says this. He continues on here, Stossel. He says, now the Senate will create its own bill and ask the Congressional Budget Office if the House bill will save money. But Obamacare was so bad, I fear these changes are just Band-Aids on a collapsing system. And I think I think he's right here. That's what they're trying to do. They are not willing. Krauthammer said this earlier this week. We are at a point where the Republicans are no longer fighting for free market solutions in healthcare. They have bought into the premise that it's the government's role to guarantee your right, quote unquote, right to healthcare. So when we're already buying into that premise, we're on our way to single payer. And I have to say, Krauthammer makes a good point there. And Stossel is saying the same thing. He says, this is Stossel's 7-point plan. He thinks the Senate should pass Stossel's 7-point plan. So this is Stossel's 7-point plan. A lot of this stuff will never happen, even though I would love for it to happen. Number 1, repeal Obamacare, all of it. With premiums soaring and insurers pulling out of Obamacare, let's start from scratch with something better. Oh, one can hope, Stossel. Fortunately, it won't happen. He says, number 2, repeal all regulations and tax breaks that encourage people to buy group insurance instead of paying for health care directly. I think I like that. I'm just saying. Now, he says insurance is sometimes needed, but insurance is a terrible bureaucratic way to pay for things. If we pay our own bills, competition will explode and prices will drop. That is 100% right. The problem is we don't have the accountability in the marketplace anymore. And I always use this example. I have a health savings account now. Because of that, I have to look at what things cost more. When the insurance just covers everything, you're not really looking at what things cost. But because now I have my health savings account, which has an unlimited amount of money in it, I look for how much things cost more. What does that mean? That means I shop around for the best price. I've had to do that for prescriptions. Imagine if everybody did that. It would create competition and prices would go down. Insurance being super involved in everything is a big problem, but this healthcare bill really doesn't address that. So I think Stossel's on point here. He says, number 3, this one will never happen. Number 3 in his plan, abolish Medicare. What's amazing to me about Medicare is Medicare isn't really good enough for a lot of people. Most people have to get supplemental insurance for Medicare. Am I right, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's fun. And that's what they do in Britain now. A lot of people have to get supplemental insurance in Britain with that. So it's funny how we have the government saying they're going to come in and fix things, and then eventually it doesn't, and you have to go to the private sector for supplemental insurance anyways. Stossel says this won't happen in terms of abolishing Medicare. I know. We old people love Medicare, he says. He says it makes so much healthcare seem free. We are also more likely to vote, and math challenge activists from groups like AARP convince old people that no cuts are needed. But that's a lie. Medicare and Social Security are unsustainable. They will bankrupt America, and few of us will get help we desperately need. He says since politicians won't touch these quote-unquote entitlements, we'll have to keep them for those already in the system, but phase out everyone younger. Liberate people to shop around. Imagine if we could actually do that. So we can all benefit from price competition and new treatments. Number 4, another one kind of like number 3 here. Abolish Medicaid, he says. Why force poor people into a one government-run bureaucracy? Ideally, private charity will take care of those who cannot pay for themselves. If you don't believe that will happen, give the poor money or vouchers and let them decide which things to spend it on. The poor have a wide range of preferences, just like the rest of us. We give people food stamps, but we didn't create a single food provision bureaucracy. Oh, that might be coming. Don't give them any ideas, Stossel. Medicaid's one-size-fits-all rules helps the poor less than they help bureaucrats and crony businesses connected to government. You know, I think he makes a good point. Even the Republicans, John Kasich is complaining out there that this health care bill does not fund Medicaid enough. It seems like the goal now of the Democrats and even some Republicans is to get more and more people on the government Medicaid system. Why don't we reform the system so more and more people can actually afford private insurance? Wouldn't that be a better solution? But no, we want more and more people on government. Stossel continues here. Number 5 in his plan. Don't punish private spending. He says, if an employer buys your health care, it's tax-free, but the feds take a huge cut. End that so that individuals buy their own insurance. Pushing them into group plans is not fair. It also distorts the economy by locking people to their jobs. Moving towards individual health savings accounts would be a step in the right direction. Better still, end rules that restrict private care. Instead of celebrating those who try to provide health services, government wraps them in red tape. This is absolutely true. It's 100% right. Number 6 in Stossel's plan. I like this. I'm going to vote for the Stossel plan. End government subsidies for hospitals. Oh, this will never happen. I always hear this argument for Medicaid, that hospitals make so much money off Medicaid. Subsidies always create higher prices. End government subsidies for hospitals. Hospital prices skyrocketed once the government started subsidizing them and dictating how they must operate. It says no matter how much business hospital owners and managers lose because of unhappy or dead customers, they'll remain stagnant as long as they can keep sucking up government money and as long as government rules make their decisions for them. And then this one, so much of this would never happen, unfortunately, in our political climate today, even though he's exactly right. It would take really bold leadership, and Trump is not conservative on this issue. He is not conservative on healthcare, so he would not do these things. That's one of the downfalls of electing Donald Trump president instead of like a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul. One of the downfalls is that he's not a conservative on this issue, and a full repeal of Obamacare was never going to happen under Trump. It's just a fact. Number 7, he says, end government subsidies for scientific research. He says people think we need government for basic research, but they're wrong. The profit motive isn't perfect, but when the market funds research, you get more innovation, like faster mapping of the human genome. The sad truth is the National Institute of Health, which Kimmel said we have to fund so babies don't die. Remember Kimmel made that rant? He made a political rant against Trump there, using his own personal experience. He said the sad truth is that National Institutes of Health has become like every other bureaucracy. Most grants go to researchers like my older brother, Tom. He's brilliant, but he's 75. He says the Institute risk-averse grant evaluators feel safer giving money to applicants with long track records, but most innovation comes from young people. People assume that NIH research brings us most new treatments and drugs, but that's not true either. To quote my brother from this winter's issue of National Affairs, 3 separate analyses concluded that 85% of the drugs approved by the FDA since 1988 arose solely from research and development performed within industry, not the bureaucracy. Very interesting. He says, we are safer if we free the market. I could not agree more. Could not agree more. All right, let's take a call here real quick. Bob in Longwood, you're on the show. How are you, man?
Yeah, thank you. You talk about Medicare. I'm on Medicare, actually, and, I have a insurance company, too, right? But I pay for it. But the people on Medicaid, right, there's a lot of people that are illegal on that, and they don't pay a dime into it, right? But what I'm paying.
You're talking about because they don't pay taxes?
Pocket. Pardon me?
You're talking about because they don't pay taxes? I mean, Medicaid's paid through taxes, right?
Right. A lot of these people don't pay taxes. They're on a system. They get everything for free. And then guess what? It's costing me, out of my pocket, paying for Medicare.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, I think Medicare was a flawed system, but that's usually the argument, that they've been paying into it for so long, and Social Security is the same way. Just talk to doctors about how Medicaid screws up the system. I've talked to them, and they'll tell you how Medicaid, I talk about how Medicaid's a disaster, and a lot of people get upset at me for that because some people are on Medicaid. Mm-hmm. But it's totally screwed up the system. And I understand people are dependent on it now, but what we need are real reforms to make private insurance and private health care cheaper and the cost of health care to go down. And then we wouldn't need as many people dependent on Medicaid. But that's what happens when you create giant government entitlement programs, because people get so dependent on it and you can never get rid of them. And they just grow and grow and grow until they're unsustainable. And it creates even more problems. All right, after the break, we have things that you can just, beyond reason things, that you just can't make up. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Whew. We have covered a lot in today's show. If you missed any of the show, you can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Just download the iHeartRadio app, actually. Download the iHeartRadio app, search Beyond Reason Radio. The podcast will be up there later tonight. You can listen to yesterday's show or any show that I've done, and then make sure to push the share button. So I thought I'd end the show today with things that are so beyond reason, you couldn't make them up. And this thing has been going around. And, well, guess who is actually seriously considering running for president?
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
Yes! Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who will be on the new Baywatch movie that's coming out soon. That looks just very deep and intellectual, and, you know, actually it looks kind of funny. I do like that the new Baywatch movie, they're kind of making fun of themselves. They're not taking themselves too seriously. I think the movie wouldn't work if they were taking themselves too seriously. But, I mean, The Rock was perfect for that movie. But anyway.
The TV show took themselves seriously.
Yeah, the TV show took itself very seriously, and nobody watched it for the seriousness of it. We all know why people watched it. You watched it for the stories, Tom?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
Somebody toiled over a script.
Yes.
For at least 20 minutes.
I don't know how they wrote run slow in the script. You know, every 5 minutes. But anyway, star of the Scorpion King, this is what HeatStreet.com puts it, even though that was like his worst movie. He's actually had some really good movies. The Rundown was a great movie. That's a few years ago now. He's in all the Fast and Furious movies, which I don't like. I liked the first one because it was actually a good racing movie. The other ones are just nuts. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, in an interview with GQ, says there's a real possibility that he'd run for president one day. I mean...
That was a joke, right?
No.
Really?
No, this is very serious.
Man.
And you know what? Who could blame him? I mean, Donald Trump is president. I think that's part of the reason, by the way, why... That's part of the reason why the Democrats are so unhinged, because they just cannot bring themselves to the point to admit to themselves that Donald Trump is president.
And that he might be right.
Yeah, he might actually do a decent job. Yeah, they can't bring themselves to admit that. But I mean, it's true. I mean, there's talk of The Rock being president. There's talk of Oprah wanting to run for president now. Trump has started this. He has started this. So, and then there's talk of Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Cuban. I don't know. You know, Mark Cuban, they'd say he'd run as a Democrat. Is he a Democrat? I mean, I've heard him say things that are not really Democratic. So
well, I'm sure he is, but wouldn't he be in the same classification as, who said it? Was it Bob Hope? Why don't you run for president? And they said, well, I don't want to take a pay cut. You know?
Well, I mean, Trump did it. So, but the thing with Mark Cuban is, if you run as a Democrat, I mean, the businessman thing works for Republicans, but not necessarily for Democrats. But The Rock said a year ago it started coming up more and more. He said there was a real sense of earnestness, which made me go home and think, let me really rethink my answer and make sure I am giving an answer that is truthful and respectful. He says, personally, I feel that if I were president, poise would be important, leadership would be important, taking responsibility for everybody would be important. I wouldn't shut them out. I would actually include them. So, what does The Rock's America look like? Well, he says he'd like to see better leadership, yada, yada, yada. So, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, you could see that maybe he's going to run for president. See, I told you. Things so beyond reason, you just can't make them up. Oh, man, I had some more stuff, but we're just frankly out of time. This has been Beyond Reason Radio. If you missed any of the show, check out the podcast. Send me a friend request on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. I will be back on tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So I'll check you guys then.